Gregg and Rick, I want to welcome you to Beyond Cinema Studios and congratulate you on this uncomfortable, amazing film. It was so wonderful to see it at the premiere yesterday at Library Center. Watching
Thank
it,
you.
I wonder whose idea was this? What was the seed of this movie? Was it Rick or you? How did this come about?
I think there's sort of a mutual disdain for certain things and curiosity and like-minded interest in troublemaking.
Yeah, I think that's the key. But I had a stand-up character that he saw and thought would make a good springboard for a movie. So
you built it around the character.
yeah, I mean it's a takeoff on the character.
Yeah.
One man's interpretation of it.
Two means interpretation of three men.
Well,
Five.
You guys have worked together before, like on the comedy, but you're writing partners on this. So tell me about what the writing process looks like between you guys.
A lot of text messages.
That's true.
A lot of the
Texting
movie. A lot of
jokes.
the movie was written via text messages with follow-up phone calls.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's just, to some degree. I mean, well, Gregg was responsible for the onstage content. That's his world, and I was interested in pushing it in certain directions, as far as, because I'm more interested in cadence and tonal kind of things, which the character has a lot of. So we used a lot of those, and then there was this just the architectural kind of things, all the environments and everything were built, and it's a fairly simple, like traditional narrative underneath the whole thing. It's almost like a cliche, and we flirt with those things and tropes
And things that have really happened to me too that ended up in the film.
Like what?
Everything from an annoying opening act talking to me as if it's a conversation between the two of us, and then going out on stage and I realized that wasn't a conversation. He was
right.
Oh, I
he was
love
doing
that
a bit
moment.
like that happens, or else the woman attacking me happened as well.
Amy Simons.
It was
I love
more
her.
violent actually than
Yeah.
the one in the movie.
we
It was
were
much
writing. We were
worse.
writing kind of. We had started writing prior to that, I think, and then we incorporated it, right?
I kind of didn't want to incorporate it because I didn't want to relive it,
Yeah.
But
God, yeah.
but of course in the movie it seems I definitely seem more at fault.
Did she attack you because you insulted her? Did she throw a drink at you?
The real life case, she was causing a lot of trouble at actually a pack show with like 300 people, and everyone was kind of like, ugh, and she was making all this noise and just being drunk and belligerent, and she eventually left, and when she was out the door, I kind of whispered into the microphone, "You little whore," and everybody laughed that this was so funny, and it's not like I'm saying that to everybody, but I mean, she was a bad person, and I
Yeah.
knew I could get a laugh saying this, and then 10 minutes later, I'm doing my set, and suddenly I feel this BAM!
What?
And she starts punching me in the face, and then she grabbed one of the drinks out from underneath my arm and smashed it on my head, and this sort of thing. So
Oh my gosh. This is, in the film it's toned down a little bit. But it's
in
still...
the film, it seems like I deserve it a bit.
Yeah, it
You
does.
know?
Let's be honest.
And in this case, I don't think I did. And also, she stiffed the bar
The
for
bar.
$100 worth
Oh
of
my
drinks
gosh.
in real life.
Well, that's really neat that you incorporate your real life experiences into the film. And the characters that John C. Reilly plays John, and then Eddie, Tye Sheridan is the clown. Where did those characters come from? Was the clown someone that you maybe saw on the road? Or, I mean, he's sort of this interesting concept of like, he really doesn't have a talent, but people laugh at him.
I mean, there's this sort of,
There's no
Gregg has had a lot of experience with a lot of different opening acts, and I have like a predilection for pushing things to like just the finite moment, and it seems like that, if you want to reduce any kind of entertainment or comedy or interaction down to its lowest common denominator, it's a clown, shitting into his hat. So.
Oh my gosh.
And
And
Tye
going
was
like
amazing.
this.
Just working people up.
Yeah,
Why?
yeah.
Why are we excited? You're
And
not
it's so
doing anything.
one-dimensional too, which is sort of fascinating to us. It's like you reduce it down to that. It's like it becomes incredibly one-dimensional, and it's sustained. Then you have to contend with that, like the root of something. And Tye was amazing, like just marshaling and just divesting himself of all of his integrity to do it.
Yeah,
because
he was very brave.
He has a lot of integrity.
In that character is so much overconfidence where you kind of, even though he's being nice, I think, to the comedian more than some people, he's just such an arrogant little shit that it's hard to.
He's shooting a web
not-
series. I was like, what is your web series about? Like, you don't do anything.
That, yeah.
But it's funny. So what do you, I mean, through that character, what are you saying about comedy? I mean, I walk away from this and I go, Rick hates comedy.
I don't,
Am I right?
I mean, obviously, I mean, you know, I'm friends with Gregg and Tim and love what they do and appreciate it and understand it, but it's not, I mean, there's a whole world of like, you know, titillating and placating audiences and the tradition of that in comedy and in entertainment that we all mutually hate.
Yeah.
You know, so
Yeah.
I don't think it can't be just sort of a blanket statement like that. I mean, I don't know much about it other than what I've sort of gleaned from these guys.
Right. Well, I love too that you explore this story specifically in the desert, which is the act of being a writer and a comedian can be lonely, and then on top of that you place it in the desert, which is this sort of lonely landscape. So tell me about why you chose that location, and what was it like shooting there? Where did you find your location?
I think originally we were talking about doing sort of a road trip across the country, but then when I told Rick, you should check out this Bakersfield, Mojave Desert area because there's a lot of variance to the landscape. And we did some scouting and looking around, and then kind of didn't use all the variance, used all the bleakest, most deserted, awful parts of Kern County.
Yeah.
You know, things like that airplane graveyard. You know, you see stuff like that, and you want to get it on film and work it into the plot.
And I think that, like, you know, I mean, there's a certain amount of cinematic trope and cliche in the desert as a place of like spiritual transformation or renewal that is ridiculous and problematic. And like in this movie, I hate metaphors, and this movie just uses them as like the you know, the building blocks. It's like just contending with all of those ideas of representation and then upsetting them a bit, you know. And so I mean, the desert is just, you know, because and dealing with one-dimensional kind of things, like reducing things down to, you know, of course, you know, loneliness would be in the desert, you know. It's like, you know,
and motel rooms, like, oh God.
Some of those were not nice.
They're awful. But you know, it supported the film in a lot of ways.
It's a lot of motel rooms and toilets, public restrooms.
That's my next question. You like read my mind. There's a lot of bathrooms and there's a lot of mirrors. And I have to think that was on purpose. Can you tell me about that choice?
Well, there's all this like weird structural balance through the thing, and these two characters, and you know, the idea of this doppelganger. There's a kid who plays a doppelganger in this photo shoot in the desert, and you know,
The
this
web series thing.
Yeah.
This, you know, and the mirrors help with that. I mean, that's sort of a pain in the ass, getting somebody to stand in the right place so you can catch them in the mirror without making them feel like a puppet, you know. It's, you know, it had to do with this balance that kept coming up, and these repetitions and stuff, and that was kind of intoxicating and weird in its own right. So.
And there is a repetition of that kind of life, you know. I mean, if you're touring, working, playing clubs, it is actually a lot of mirrors and public restrooms and you know.
And it forces you into self-reflection in a way, maybe?
I'm not going to disagree.
Like, yes. Well, I'm curious about Rick. You were saying earlier that, you know, the jokes were Gregg's, but a lot of sort of the tone was coming from you and the shaping of the story and the structure. And I kept thinking about Kubrick. Was he one of your influences, or is that just kind of me?
I mean, he's such like a milestone and a bedrock, you know. I mean, it's in there, yeah. There's a whole lot of stuff in there. I mean, it is this kind of like, you know, compendium, this sort of like grab bag of all of these things, and now that Kubrick grammar is a kind of trope. So I mean, it's like you know, it's dealing with a lot of that stuff. You know, it's definitely flirts with it. Yeah.
I think the long shots in the motel room, down the hallway. I mean, how can you not think of Kubrick? You know.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a big fan of The Shining. And
I can see that.
2001.
Yeah.
I was really into Two-Lane Blacktop, and when I mentioned it to Rick when we first met, we both were like, yes.
Yeah.
And for me, I don't know, I just kept thinking, if we can make this half as good as Two-Lane Blacktop, you know.
It's not quite as exciting as Two-Lane Blacktop.
It's not. It's actually got less action.
Well, tell me about the soundtrack. You've got a track by Frank Sinatra Jr. I mean, the music is just so key. So tell me about the choices in music.
Frank Sinatra Jr. is like my idol. And when I first started doing the whole meal hamburger thing, I mean, 20 years ago, when it was such a minor thing, I really I said to people, if I ever had a movie made, this Frank Sinatra Jr. Black Knight would have to be the theme song. So when we first started talking about it, I'm like, Rick, this song, you gotta, this has got to be in there. But it really worked. But yeah, I actually I'm probably the world's biggest expert in Frank Sinatra Jr. I mean, I ran a website, a fan website for this guy. And last year I had the opportunity to meet him, and I actually just asked him flat out, we're doing this film, love to have this song in it. He's like, anything you want, you know.
That's amazing.
Made it happen. And then a lot of his other songs are songs from private pressing records that I have that I, you know. There were a lot of MP3s exchanged of what do you think of this, what do you think of that.
Yeah, between Gregg and Chris Swanson, our music supervisor, I mean, they both have access to a lot of kind of marginalized music that is as good as anything in the day. I mean, there's a lot of like late 60s, 70s kind of like, and
the soul stuff, the obscure soul stuff that Chris brought into the picture is so nice. And especially because we're in these, we were shooting in honky-tonk type bars sometimes and things like that, but then in the movie there's this lush late 60s soul that
and that
Chris
keeps on repeating,
so
and it has no place in that landscape.
Right,
no,
I know.
No, for some reason you accept it just outright, and I think it increases
because it's what's happening maybe eternally. I don't know. And lastly, I just have to ask, I mean, I know what the white cowboy means to me, but I'm curious what it means to you guys and your intentions in putting it in the movie.
I mean, it has beautiful, like, formal qualities, and it has all that, like, all this metaphoric kind of qualities, but really it's just this, you know, the stereotype of you know, the white European male kind of American idiot entertainer, you know. I mean,
with
like
rhinestones.
The rhinestone nudie suit. I mean, it is like, this is, and exporting that around the world, you know. I mean, there's a lot in the movie about, you know, our cultural export of anesthetizing people with just idiocy. And I think that this is you know, he's embodying this thing, and he's being kind of, you know, I mean, the patsy for an entire culture that ruined the world. Yeah.
I mean, it's like brought into this Mexican sitcom to essentially play the ugly American, but at least it's work, right?
Yeah. Well, I loved it. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.